You know that feeling when someone thinks they own your property more than you do. Well, last month our HOA president decided my workshop was her personal parking garage. She literally moved her BMW inside, changed the locks, and told me I was disrupting the neighborhood aesthetic by working on cars, so I did what any reasonable person would do. I welded every single door and window shut while she was at her book club meeting. Then I left for a 3-week vacation to Mexico. The screaming voicemails started on day 2, but let me back up and tell you how we got here, because this story is absolutely wild from start to finish. 6 months ago, I thought I'd found paradise. After years of cramped apartment living, and I mean years of thin walls, upstairs neighbors who apparently practiced Irish step dancing at 2 a.m., and landlords who considered fixing the heat a seasonal suggestion, I finally bought my dream house. That it was a 1960s ranch home with character. You know the type, real hardwood floors that creaked in all the right places, windows that actually opened, and a kitchen big enough to cook in without bumping your elbows on the refrigerator every time you turned around. But the real treasure was out back. The previous owner had converted the detached 2-car garage into the most beautiful workshop you've ever seen in your life. We're talking professional-grade, polished concrete floors that were so smooth you could eat off them, industrial, LED lighting that made everything look like a car commercial, enough electrical outlets to power a small manufacturing plant, all run with proper 220 volts lines for serious equipment. The guy who built it was named Frank, a retired mechanic who'd spent 30 years working on everything from classic Corvettes to modern Hunters. He'd poured his heart and soul into creating this space. Custom-built workbenches at the perfect height, a hydraulic car lift installed by professionals, tool pegboards that looked like they belonged in a magazine. Frank gave me the tour before I signed the papers, and I swear his eyes got misty when he showed me his pride and joy. Spent every weekend for 2 years getting this place perfect, he said, running his hands along a workbench he'd built by hand. Promise me you'll take care of her. I promised, and I meant it. See, I'm a software engineer by day, the kind of job where you spend 8 hours staring at screens, debugging code, and pretending to care about quarterly reports. It pays the bills and then some, but it doesn't feed the soul. My soul gets fed on weekends, with a wrench set in my hands and motor oil under my fingernails. There's something deeply therapeutic about working on cars. Maybe it's because cars are honest. They either run or they don't, and if they don't, there's always a logical reason why. No office politics, no passive-aggressive emails, no meetings that could have been a 5-word text message. Plus, I inherited this passion honestly. My dad was a mechanic back in the day, and some of my earliest memories are of standing on a milk crate in his garage, handing him tools and watching him bring dead engines back to life, like some kind of automotive wizard. When Dad passed away 5 years ago, I inherited his tool collection. Snap-on wrenches that were older than me but still perfectly calibrated. A torque wrench he'd saved up for months to buy. Hand tools worn smooth by decades of honest work. Having Frank's workshop felt like finally having a proper shrine for Dad's tools, a place where his legacy could live on through my weekend projects. For 4 absolutely blissful months, life was perfect. The neighborhood seemed like something out of a movie. The Johnsons next door were retired teachers who spent their days gardening and would wave cheerfully whenever they saw me. Their flower beds looked like they belonged in better homes and gardens. Across the street lived a couple of college kids who were quiet as church mice. They'd nod politely when we crossed paths. Never threw parties, never even played music loud enough to hear from outside. Model neighbors. Then there was Mrs. Patterson, the elderly lady who lived 2 houses down with her 6 cats. Every single one of those cats had a name, a personality, and apparently a daily routine that Mrs. Patterson could recite in detail. She'd smile and wave whenever I'd test drive one of my restored projects down the street, and sometimes she'd even come over to admire my work. "That sounds just like my late husband's Mustang," she told me once, listening to my freshly rebuilt 1967 fastback purr in the driveway. He would have loved to see this. During those perfect months, I restored that Mustang from a rust bucket someone was using as a planter to a show-quality classic that turned heads at every stoplight. I rebuilt the engine on a vintage Harley-Davidson that a neighbor bought non-running at an estate sale, and I started working on the project that would become my masterpiece. A 1969, Camaro essays that needed everything from frame-up restoration to a complete interior rebuild. Every Saturday morning became a ritual. I'd wake up naturally around 7. No alarm needed because my body knew it was workshop day. I'd make a proper pot of coffee in my French press, not that office swill I survived on during the week. I'd put on my oldest jeans, the ones with permanent grease stains that told the story of every project I'd ever completed. Then I'd grab my coffee and disappear into my sanctuary. The outside world could keep its drama, its stress, its urgent emails marked ASAP that were never actually urgent. In my workshop, the only thing that mattered was the rhythm of methodical work, the satisfaction of taking something broken and making it whole again. Some Saturdays I'd work until sunset, completely losing track of time. Other days, I'd just spend an hour cleaning and organizing, enjoying the meditative process of putting everything in its proper place. It was peace, pure, uninterrupted peace. Then Linda Worthington moved in 3 houses down. The first sign of trouble should have been the moving truck, not the truck itself, but Linda's behavior around it. While most people supervise movers with the occasional careful with that or helpful direction, Linda treated those poor guys like her personal army. I was working in my driveway, changing the oil on my daily driver, when I heard her voice for the first time. "Excuse me, that box is clearly labeled fragile in red marker. Do you see the red marker? That means you don't just throw it around like it's a bag of potatoes." The moving guy, probably in his 50s with the patient demeanor of someone who'd dealt with difficult customers for decades, just nodded and said, "Yes ma'am, we'll be more careful. You'd better be. I'm rating this experience online, and your company's reputation depends on how you handle my belongings from this point forward." Red flag number 1. Red flag number 2 came the next morning. I was having my coffee on the back porch, enjoying the Sunday morning quiet, when Linda appeared at my fence line with a measuring tape. She was measuring the height of my fence. When she noticed me watching, she didn't wave or introduce herself. She just called out, "Is this fence on the property line or on your side?" "On my side," I called back, about 6 inches in from the actual line. She made a note on a clipboard, at 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning. "Are you sure? Because HOA regulations specify maximum fence heights, and if this is encroaching on common area, that's a violation." I hadn't even finished my first cup of coffee, and this woman was already talking about violations. "It's definitely on my property," I said, trying to keep things neighborly. "The survey stakes are still there from when I bought the house." More notes on the clipboard. That afternoon, she showed up at my front door for what I assumed would be a proper introduction. Boy, was I wrong. She was maybe 55, with that particular Karen haircut that seems to come with a built-in demand to speak to managers. Perfect blonde highlights, perfectly straight layers, perfectly positioned to frame a face that looked like it hadn't smiled genuinely in years. She wore a crisp, white polo shirt with an HOA logo embroidered on the chest, khaki pants with creases, sharp enough to cut paper, and white tennis shoes that had clearly never touched actual tennis courts. "I'm Linda Worthington, MBA, former Fortune 500 executive, and your new HOA president," she announced, extending a manicured hand that felt like shaking hands with a mannequin. "Nice to meet you, Linda. I'm here to discuss some concerns about your activities, not how are you settling in, or welcome to the neighborhood. Straight to concerns about my activities." She gestured toward my workshop like she was pointing out a crack house, the noise levels, the visual impact, the potential property value implications. I wiped my hands on a shop rag and tried to maintain my composure. "What kind of concerns specifically?" "Well, for starters, the noise. Mrs. Patterson mentioned you sometimes work until 7 p.m. on weekends. 7 p.m. on weekends. In my own workshop, on my own property. Let that sink in for a moment. I also have concerns about the aesthetic impact. This is a community of professionals, not an automotive junkyard. Your activities don't align with our neighborhood's character and standards." I looked at my workshop. Fresh paint job from last spring. Clean concrete driveway that I pressure washed monthly. Organized tool storage visible through spotless windows. Not a single piece of trash. Not an oil stain. Not even a leaf out of place. Meanwhile, Linda's own front yard featured those plastic pink flamingos that apparently qualified as whimsical accent pieces under HOA aesthetic guidelines. "Ma'am, I work on classic car restoration as a hobby. Everything's legal, everything's clean, and I keep reasonable hours. That brings up another concern. She consulted her clipboard like a prosecutor reading charges. Are you running a business out of a residential area? I'm not running a business. I restore cars for fun, occasionally help neighbors with basic maintenance, maybe sell one finished project every 6 months or so. Selling cars sounds like business activity to me. This woman had been in the neighborhood for exactly 2 days, and she was already trying to shut down my hobby based on her interpretation of what might constitute business activity. She handed me a formal notice printed on official HOA letterhead. You have 30 days to cease all automotive activities or face escalating HOA enforcement action. 30 days to stop doing something I'd been doing peacefully for 4 months. Something that bothered exactly nobody. Something that was completely within my rights as a property owner. This seems a bit extreme, I said, trying to keep my voice level. Maybe we could find a compromise that Mr. ... She paused, realizing she'd never actually asked my name. Davidson. Tom Davidson. Mr. Davidson, I've been elected to maintain property values and community standards. Compromise leads to precedent, and precedent leads to declining neighborhood quality. I'm sure you understand. No, Linda, I did not understand. That notice was just the opening shot in what would become a full-scale war against my right to exist peacefully in my own home. Linda had apparently decided that her life's purpose was to rid our street of any activity more exciting than watering petunias and checking mailboxes. Week 1 of her campaign started immediately. Monday morning, I left for work to find Linda standing in my driveway with a professional decibel meter that probably cost more than most people's car payments, just conducting baseline noise measurements, she announced, like this was completely normal behavior. That Saturday, she positioned herself at the end of my driveway at exactly 9 a.m., when she knew I'd start working. For 3 solid hours, she stood there with her clipboard and her decibel meter, documenting every sound that came from my workshop. I was working on the Camaro's transmission, which involved some power tool use, but nothing excessive. Certainly nothing louder than the lawnmowers that ran all weekend long throughout the neighborhood. Every few minutes, Linda would make notes. When I used my impact wrench, more notes. When I started my air compressor, vigorous note-taking. When I dropped a wrench and it clanged on the concrete floor. She actually took a photo with her phone. The psychological warfare was incredibly effective. Instead of losing myself in the meditative rhythm of mechanical work, I found myself constantly aware of her presence, second-guessing every move, trying to work more quietly than was practical or safe. Week 2 brought the community meeting. Linda sent formal invitations to every house on our street for a community discussion regarding neighborhood standards and quality of life concerns. The meeting was held at her house, which I have to admit was immaculately decorated in that sterile everything matches and nothing has personality style that looks like a furniture store display. 4 people showed up. Me, the Johnsons from next door, and Mrs. Patterson. Linda had prepared a PowerPoint presentation, an actual PowerPoint presentation about my workshop. Slide 1. Noise pollution, data collected over 7 days of observation. She had charts, color-coded charts, showing decibel levels throughout my work sessions. Slide 2. Property value impact analysis. She'd apparently researched comparable home sales in neighborhoods with and without automotive activities, and concluded that my hobby was costing everyone thousands in property value. Slide 3. Traffic and safety concerns. This one was my favorite. Linda had documented the increased vehicle traffic caused by my occasional test drives around the block. The Johnsons looked confused. Mrs. Patterson looked annoyed, but not at me. Linda, Mrs. Patterson interrupted during slide 4. Tom's been nothing but a good neighbor. His workshop is cleaner than most people's kitchens, and frankly, I enjoy hearing him work on those beautiful cars. That's exactly the problem, Linda replied without missing a beat. You're enabling behavior that impacts the entire community. The Johnsons excused themselves during slide 6. Mrs. Patterson left during slide 8, but not before telling Linda that she was making a mountain out of a molehill. That left me and Linda staring at each other across her pristine living room, while slide 9 explained the legal precedents for HOA enforcement action remained frozen on her TV. Any questions? Linda asked. Yeah, why are you doing this? For just a moment, her composure slipped. I'm protecting our investment. This neighborhood has standards, but I'm not violating any standards. I'm not breaking any rules. I'm just working on cars in my own garage. Your garage is zoned residential, not commercial. It's not commercial. It's a hobby that you monetize. I sold one car in 4 months. One, for less than I had invested in parts. Linda started packing up her presentation materials. Mr. Davidson, I've been managing teams and maintaining standards for 20 years. I know disruptive behavior when I see it. Week 3 was when the real harassment began. Linda started parking her pristine white BMW X5 directly behind my workshop's roll-up door every single day. Not in front of it, not beside it, directly behind it, positioned so I couldn't open the door more than 2 feet without hitting her bumper. The first time it happened, I knocked on her door politely. Linda, your car is blocking my garage door. Could you move it, please? I'm parked on a public street, she replied. I have every right to park there. Technically, she was correct that street parking was public, but the positioning was obviously intentional, clearly designed to prevent me from using my own garage. You're right, it's public parking, but you're making it impossible for me to get my car out. Then maybe you should park in your driveway like everyone else. My project car is in the garage. I need to be able to get it out. Sounds like a you problem. This became her daily routine. Every morning before work, Linda would move her BMW to block my garage. Every evening when she came home, she'd park it in her own driveway. Then, the next morning, right back to blocking my access. When I started parking my daily driver in the street to leave the driveway clear for moving project cars, Linda complained to the HOA about excessive street parking. When I worked late, one Friday evening, until the absolutely unreasonable hour of 6:30 p.m., Linda called the police with a noise complaint. The officer who responded was apologetic but had to document the call. Look, I hear what you're doing in there, and it's no louder than my neighbor's leaf blower. But if she keeps calling, we have to keep responding. How many times has she called? This is the 4th time this month. For noise complaints, for perfectly reasonable activities during completely appropriate hours. Then came the HOA citations, delivered with the efficiency of a tax audit. Citation number 1. Grass height, exceeding community standards. I measured my grass. It was exactly the same height as every other lawn on the street, including Linda's. Citation number 2. Visible oil stains on driveway surface. I spent an hour with a magnifying glass looking for oil stains. There weren't any. My driveway was cleaner than most people's kitchen floors. Citation number 3. Unapproved exterior modifications visible from public areas. This one was for a vintage Coca-Cola sign I had hanging inside my workshop that was visible through the window. Inside my workshop, on my property. Each citation came with a fine schedule and an escalating enforcement timeline. First offense, warning. Second offense, $50 fine. Third offense, $100 fine and referral for legal action. I was suddenly facing $150 in fines for having grass, a clean driveway, and a Coca-Cola sign in my own garage. But Linda wasn't finished. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning when I discovered Linda had crossed a line I didn't even know existed. I'd left for work that morning like any other day, grabbed my coffee, kissed my girlfriend Sarah goodbye. She'd been staying over more often, partially because she loved my cooking, and partially because she wanted to witness Linda's insanity firsthand, and headed to the office for another thrilling day of software debugging. When I came home that evening, something felt wrong immediately. The workshop looked different, but I couldn't put my finger on what had changed. Then I tried to open the roll-up door. It was locked, not just closed, locked with a brand new deadbolt that definitely hadn't been there when I left for work. I walked around to the side door, the one I usually used for quick access, also locked. Another new deadbolt, this one with a shiny brass finish that hadn't had time to weather. Through the workshop windows, I could see my tools, my equipment, my half-finished Camaro, and Linda's pristine white BMW parked right in the center of my workspace like she owned the place. My phone buzzed with a text message from Linda. Your automotive activities have been suspended pending comprehensive HOA review. Your workshop space is being temporarily repurposed for community storage pending resolution of violations. The locks have been changed for security and insurance purposes. Community storage. She had broken into my private workshop, parked a personal vehicle inside, changed my locks, and was now claiming it was for community storage. I stood there staring at my own property, locked out of my own building, while Linda's car sat smugly inside like some kind of automotive hostage. I called the police immediately. The responding officer was the same guy who'd answered Linda's noise complaints, and he looked as frustrated as I felt. "This is insane," Officer Martinez said, shaking his head as he peered through my workshop windows. "But legally, it's complicated. She's HOA president, she's claiming some kind of property dispute, and she says she has documentation about violations. It's my workshop, on my property. She broke in and stole my garage." I know, but HOA disputes are civil matters, unless there's clear criminal activity. She's not claiming to own the building, just that she has authority to secure it temporarily, so she can just lock me out of my own property. You need to talk to a lawyer, get injunctive relief, challenge her authority, whatever. But this is above my pay grade. A lawyer. I needed a lawyer to access my own garage on my own property, because Linda Worthington decided my hobby was a threat to civilization. That night, I sat on my back porch, staring at my locked workshop, drinking a beer and trying to process what had just happened. Sarah sat beside me, equally stunned. "She actually stole your garage," Sarah said, like she couldn't believe the words coming out of her mouth. "She sure did. What are you going to do?" I smiled. For the first time in weeks, I smiled a genuine, deeply satisfied smile. "I'm going to call Mike. Mike Hendricks owns Hendricks Welding, and he's been my buddy since high school. We played football together, dated the same girl, not at the same time, and he was the best man at my wedding before my divorce. More importantly, Mike has never met a problem he couldn't solve with fire and metal." "Mike, hypothetical question. If someone wanted to weld some doors shut, really, permanently shut, how long would that take, hypothetically?" I could hear the grin in his voice. "Depends how thorough you want to be. If you want to do it right, make it so they'd need serious cutting equipment to get back in, maybe 2 hours for a standard garage setup. What about windows? Windows too. You really don't want someone getting in, do you? It's single quotes as ... complicated. Tom, are you planning something that's going to make me an accessory to whatever revenge fantasy you're cooking up?" "Probably." "Sweet. When do we start?" This is why Mike's been my friend for 20 years. I'd done my reconnaissance over the previous weeks of harassment. Linda's schedule was predictable as sunrise. Tuesday evenings were her book club at the community center from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. She never missed it, never came home early, never varied the routine. Perfect. We met at my house at 7:15 p.m. the next Tuesday. Mike brought his portable welding rig, the industrial-grade unit he used for on-site repairs. The thing could melt steel beams if you cranked it up high enough. "Remind me what we're welding shut again," Mike asked as we wheeled his equipment toward my workshop. "Every possible way, in or out, and the car inside." "That's Linda's problem now." Mike peered through the window at the BMW sitting in my workshop. "That's a nice car. It'll be a nice display piece." We started with the roll-up door. Mike ran beads of weld material along the entire track system, essentially fusing the door to the rails so it could never move again. Then we welded the track mounting brackets to the wall studs for extra security. The side door got the full treatment. We welded the hinges, welded the frame, and ran a continuous weld bead around the entire door perimeter. That door wasn't opening without serious demolition work. Every window got welded shut at the latch points. We left the glass intact. No property damage, just security modifications. Mike even welded the electrical panel box shut, just because we could. "You know," Mike said, admiring our handiwork, "whoever's trapped something in there is going to have a really interesting day." The beauty of the plan was its simplicity. Linda wanted to secure my workshop. Now it was as secure as Fort Knox. She wanted to use it for storage. Great. Her car was permanently stored. I wasn't damaging her property. I wasn't breaking any laws. I was just making modifications to my own building on my own land. "What happens when she figures out what you did?" Mike asked as we cleaned up his equipment. "That's when the real fun starts." At 5 a.m. Thursday morning, I loaded my truck with camping gear, fishing equipment, and enough clothes for 3 weeks. I'd been planning this Mexico trip for months, a solo adventure to some remote beaches on the Yucatan Peninsula, where cell phone towers were more theoretical than practical. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Before leaving town, I drove past Linda's house one last time. Her BMW was conspicuously absent from her driveway. presumably because it was enjoying its new permanent home in my workshop. I left one note taped to Linda's front door. Gone fishing in Mexico for 3 weeks. Your car is safe and secure in climate-controlled storage. Hope you find alternative transportation. P.S. You might want to check with the city about cutting torch permits. You'll probably need them. Tom. The drive to Mexico was the most relaxed I'd felt in months. Every mile between me and Linda Worthington felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. No HOA drama, no harassment, no one measuring my grass with a ruler or timing my workshop activities. Just open road, good music, and the promise of 3 weeks without hearing Linda's voice. I crossed the border at Brownsville and kept driving south until I hit a little fishing village called Puerto Progreso that most tourists had never heard of. White sand beaches, crystal clear water, and a complete absence of HOA presidents. Paradise. I rented a little beach cottage for $25 a night from a local fisherman named Carlos, who thought my Spanish was hilarious but appreciated my enthusiasm for his recommendations about the best fishing spots. For the first week, I did absolutely nothing productive. I fished from the pier at sunrise, napped in a hammock during the heat of the day, and spent evenings drinking beer with Carlos and his friends while they told stories in rapid-fire Spanish that I understood maybe half of. It was exactly what my soul needed. No schedules, no responsibilities, no one demanding explanations for how I chose to spend my time. The best part, my phone had 0 bars of signal. I was completely, blissfully disconnected from whatever chaos Linda was experiencing. Back home, when I drove into the nearest town with cell service in week 2, my phone exploded with notifications. 47 missed calls, all from Linda, 32 text messages, increasingly frantic, and a voicemail box that was completely full. I bought a beer from a local convenience store, found a shady spot outside, and settled in for what I knew would be the most entertaining 20 minutes of my entire vacation. The voicemails told the story of Linda's escalating panic in real time. Message 1. Left at 8:17 a.m. the morning after my welding project. Tom, this is Linda. I don't know what you think you're doing, but my car is locked in your garage and I can't get the doors open. Call me immediately. Message 2, 8:43 a.m. Tom, this is harassment. You can't trap someone's car. I'm calling the police. Messages 3 through 7 documented Linda's growing realization that the police couldn't help her. Apparently, locking someone out of their own building was a civil matter, but locking someone's car inside their own building was also a civil matter. Message 12, left around noon. I know you did something to the doors. They won't budge, and there are these weird metal marks around the frames. This is vandalism. Message 18 showed the first crack in Linda's confidence. Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. I might have been a little assertive about the workshop situation. Can we talk about this? By message 25, Linda had apparently discovered that professional cutting services were expensive. Do you have any idea how much it costs to hire someone with industrial cutting equipment? This is extortion. Message 31 revealed that Linda had tried multiple contractors. Nobody wants to cut into your building without written permission from the property owner. This is insane. Message 37 showed complete desperation. I need my car for work. I've been driving a rental for 2 weeks. My insurance won't cover this because they say it's a civil dispute. The final message, number 47, was barely a whisper. Tom, please, I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. I just want my car back. But my absolute favorite voicemail came from Mrs. Patterson. Tom, honey, I don't know where you are, but Linda's been walking around the neighborhood, asking everyone if they know how to contact you. Yesterday she knocked on my door crying. I told her she made her bed and now she gets to lie in it. Have a wonderful vacation, dear. I also had messages from the Johnsons, who wanted to invite me to a barbecue when I got back. Apparently, the whole neighborhood was talking about Linda's situation and most people thought it was hilarious. Even better, my HOA treasurer had called to inform me that Linda had been removed as HOA president after an emergency community meeting. Turns out, breaking into people's workshops wasn't covered under presidential duties in the HOA bylaws. Linda had been replaced by Mr. Johnson, who left a message saying his first official act would be to rescind all of my citations and refund my fines. I finished my beer, turned my phone back off, and drove back to the beach. 2 more weeks of fishing and hammock naps, while Linda figured out her transportation situation. Life was good. I came back to Texas with a tan, a cooler full of frozen fish, and the kind of deep relaxation that only comes from 3 weeks of absolutely zero responsibility. Linda was waiting in my driveway when I pulled up. Gone was the confident HOA president, with her clipboard and demands and perfectly pressed polo shirts. This Linda looked like she'd aged 5 years in 3 weeks. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was wearing wrinkled jeans and a faded t-shirt, and she was leaning against a dented rental car that had clearly seen better days. Most importantly, she looked genuinely, thoroughly humbled. "Tom," she said, as I got out of my truck, "we need to talk." I unloaded my fishing gear and cooler, taking my time. About what? About me being wrong. About everything. I stopped and looked at her, really looked at her. The arrogance was gone. The entitled attitude had been replaced by something I'd never seen from Linda before. Genuine shame. "I owe you an apology," she continued. "A real one. Not a strategic one or a lawyer-advised one. A real, human apology for treating you terribly." I set down my cooler and waited. "I was wrong about your workshop. I was wrong about your hobbies. I was wrong about how I treated you from the day I moved in." She paused, looking at my still welded workshop. "I was dealing with some personal stuff, and I took it out on you, and that wasn't fair, or right, or decent." For the first time since I'd met her, Linda Worthington looked human instead of like a hostile takeover in a polo shirt. "I just got divorced," she said quietly. "Messy divorce. 23 years of marriage, and my ex-husband got the house, the vacation place, half my retirement, and apparently most of our friends too." She gestured at the neighborhood around us. "I had to downsize. From a 4,000 square foot house to a 1,500 square foot ranch. I went from being a Fortune 500 executive to being unemployed at 55. I was angry about starting over, angry about not feeling in control of anything in my life. The pieces started falling into place. So I tried to control everything else." Linda continued. "Your workshop, your hobbies, your schedule, your right to exist peacefully in your own home. I became everything I used to hate about micromanaging bosses and controlling people." She took a shaky breath. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just want my car back, and then I'll stay completely out of your way. I'm moving next month. This neighborhood deserves better than what I brought to it." Standing there looking at Linda, really looking at her, not at the HOA president persona, but at the scared, displaced woman underneath, I felt something I hadn't expected. Sympathy. Sympathy. I called Mike that afternoon. Time for phase 2. Cutting everything open. Cutting everything open. Mike arrived with his cutting torch and industrial equipment, grinning, like he was about to open the world's most expensive Christmas present. "I have to admit, I'm curious to see how the BMW held up," he said, setting up his gear. Linda stood nearby, wringing her hands like she was waiting for medical test results. It took about as long to free her car as it had taken to trap it. Mike methodically cut through every weld, peeling back the metal seams we'd laid down 3 weeks earlier. When the roll-up door finally opened, Linda's BMW sat exactly where we'd left it, dusty, covered in 3 weeks' worth of debris that had blown in through the windows I'd left open in my house, but otherwise undamaged. Linda walked around her car like she was inspecting a returned hostage. It's fine," she said, sounding surprised. "Of course it's fine," I replied. "I'm not a monster. I just wanted to make a point." She paid Mike for both the welding and cutting work without complaint. She even offered to cover my vacation expenses, which I politely declined. That trip was worth every penny I'd spent. But here's the thing that surprised me. As Mike was cutting through the last weld on the side door, Linda asked, "What kind of car is that?" "The blue one." She was looking at my Camaro. "It's a 1969 Camaro SS. I'm restoring it. My dad had one of those when I was little. Same color." For the first time since I'd known her, Linda's face softened completely. I used to help him wash it on Sundays. He'd let me spray the wheels while he did the bodywork. The transformation was remarkable. The stressed HOA president disappeared, and I saw a little girl who'd once been proud to spend time with her father. "Would you... double quotes," she started, then stopped. "Never mind. What would you mind if I looked at it sometime? Before I move. I haven't thought about my dad's car in years." That next Saturday, Linda showed up at my workshop with coffee and donuts from the good bakery downtown. She didn't bring a clipboard, a measuring tape, or a single complaint. She just stood quietly while I showed her the Camaro's progress, explaining the restoration process and pointing out original parts versus reproductions. She told